That's great. Oh,
Oh
well,
my
we're
goodness.
Okay.
recording now,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
a wonderful way to open up this meeting with laughter from everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carla. So, welcome. So, tonight we're gathering to talk about some upcoming classes. And tonight was meant to be an open mic night where we can ask the trainers questions. So, we may have some questions in chat that we'll share as we go along. So, I'd like to introduce you to two of our trainers, Carl Buchheit, co-founder and trainer at NLP Marin, and Carla Camou, trainer, as well as both of them creating the material of NLP Marin. So welcome. And Carla, we have a few questions for you. We have a couple of certification courses starting next March, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about them. Maybe core competencies and ITC. A lot of students ask, are they the same class? Are they different? And what is the format? So first, what are they?
Well, there are they're not our entry level. There are full scale, in terms of full scale classes, there are entry level classes, but our students enter here and they get done over there. So it's not like it's an entry level experience, but it's the first thing that we teach to deliver the entire basic curriculum of classic neuro linguistic programming. And when I say classic, I mean to contrast it with transformational NLP, which comes a little bit later, but it includes all of the classic material because that stuff from the 1970s is gorgeous. It's incredibly useful. I've just been seeing clients all day, and I kind of did classic NLP all day. For those who understand this, I did swishes this morning for 2 hours with somebody.
Wow.
So yeah. And the core stands for Core Competencies of Transformational Neuro Linguistic Programming. Obviously, we net that down to core for really understandable reasons. And that goes on over a period of months. It's 6 weekends spread out about once a month, Jaimie?
Yeah, over about 6 months.
6 months.
5.5 to 6 months, just depending on the calendar. I don't know what it is this year for sure. Do you know, Jaimie?
It is 6 months, 5 months. Yes, two and a yeah.
Yep. Okay.
2 1 month. Yes, 6 weekends spread out over 5 months.
And the first weekend are we doing the 4-day first weekend still? Okay, first weekend is 4 days. After that, the remaining 5 weekends are 3 days. And the hours are 10 to 6 Pacific time. And well, they're kind of everything you need to know the basics of everything about neurolinguistic programming.
It's the basic toolbox. So
yeah. And as I was sort of trying to say correctly earlier, just a moment ago, it is essential to have that toolbox before we can go on to the more kind of elevated or esoteric applications of NLP, because the basic toolbox is still there in use like all the time, every day. So that's the core competencies class, which I teach with Carla. And then there's the intensive training core ITC, which Carla teaches pretty much solo, but often with Jaimie as well when Jaimie is available.
Yeah. Well, and Carl comes into the ITC a little bit too. So the ITC is just a little bit more accelerated version of core. It's all the same skills, all the same toolkit, but it is in a shorter period. It was designed as something that people could fly in for when we were doing all in-person classes, and now we do it in a hybrid. It's 3 weekends. The first 2 weekends are 5 days, Wednesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to, I think, or is it 9 a.m. till 7? Do you remember what their time is?
It's 10 till 8.
10 till 8. Okay, yeah. So it's a little bit longer days than the core, fewer days. And then the third weekend is also the 6th weekend of course. We bring the two groups together, and that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10 to 6. Sorry. So there's no real difference in the two classes, except the ITC has kind of a little bit more. It's kind of like doing the accelerated summer course. And we find that there isn't a lot of difference in the skill level that people have by the time they get to the last weekend, but it's really about picking the dates and the format that you believe you learn the best in.
Yes.
Or that you can survive the easiest. Some people experience 6 weekends as being way too long, and other people experience the intensive format as being way too short. So
yeah, the core class gives you the opportunity. We do study groups in between, and the study groups are led by TAs. They are no new materials presented in the study groups. It's a chance to practice what happened over the weekend, but it's also a place where people do actually kind of get to know each other pretty well. There's a little bit more time for talking. And so with core, you get more study groups, obviously, because it's over a longer period. So you get more out of class practice. So ITC is a little bit better suited for people who are already working with people who can practice some of those skills in other places in their life. But we've had people who've been able to do both, and or switch from one to another or something like that. They do just fine. It's just yourself, if you want to practice something multiple times. If you want a little bit more time to integrate, or if you're a fast integrator, that's kind of how it plays out for what's going to be the best for you. And Jaimie can help you just talk you through kind of what works for you.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. And students ask a lot of the time, since one is a 6-month course and one is a 2-month, actually 3-month course, do you go through all the same material?
Yeah.
Okay. So same course, and you go through, you do all the same.
Oftentimes it's in a slightly different order, but it's the same material.
Same material.
And it's not much different order, but it sometimes it's a little bit. Yeah. Couldn't tell you exactly what it is right now. I get the two. Yeah.
Yes. And then one question that's commonly asked is, what is the difference between classical NLP and transformational NLP?
classical NLP or conventional NLP, as we think about it, is it's very much the original which is brought to life by some really remarkable people in the middle 1970s, moving up into the very early 1980s. And then conventional NLP began to gradually, through the 80s, it turned into coaching. And then into the 90s, it turned into a toolbox for picking up people in bars. In other words, this beautiful thing that got kind of flattened out in the 80s when it was just about coaching, not change work, but sort of giving advice kind of format. And then in the 90s, with all of that speed seduction stuff, if you're old enough to know about that time, it was pretty awful. At least from our perspective, it was pretty awful. But the stuff from the 70s is just beautiful, and one other thing about conventional NLP, as it kind of morphed through the 80s and into the 90s, it began to be less and less and less about personal change and personal growth and creating contexts in which belonging was easier for everyone involved. Excuse me. And it began to be about persuasion, powerful tools for persuading people to think anything you want them to think. I'm overstating that. That was rude, but not too far off. Transformational NLP is not about persuasion. It's about revision, respect for, discovering the nature of, and then respecting the programming, the patterning. That's why the word programming is in the name Neuro Linguistic Programming. It sounds awfully nerdy, but human beings are programmable creatures like all creatures. It's about uncovering and respecting and revising that patterning in order to gradually open ourselves up to making it easier and easier and easier for the universe to deliver what we want. That's one way to say it. Another way to say it is to make it easier and easier and easier to adjust the patterning so that there's not nearly as much of a gap between what we're experiencing now that we don't want and what we would like to be experiencing over here. We get that narrowed way, way down, and then we have some ways of just making it possible that they go. And then what we're experiencing turns, what we're naturally experiencing that we don't want, unfolds itself into the experience of what we do want. And the key thing about that is we do not have to remember to be different any more than whatever patterns I'm using to talk right now. I'm not trying to remember how to do anything. I'm just talking because I've been talking for a long time, my whole life, right? So the point of really good NLP change work is to have the experience you want without having to work hard or remember to be different. Not working hard seems un-American. So this is why we make people suffer a lot when they're sitting in their chairs or staying online. And yes.
Yeah. And I would add to that, conventional NLP can be effective in creating change. It is a little bit more focused on actual, like, on the change and on something better without really understanding how things are the way that they are now. So it's about kind of replacing what you have with something better. But when you are not paying attention to the fact that things, the way things are, the way you're structured right now was a solution to something. It is your brain working properly. And in transformational NLP, we are looking at and understanding how things are the way they are, and then allowing them to change. And in that, it gives people an opportunity to be able to include their entire life with respect, and to be able to lift off a lot of the self-judgment that one has had for the way they've been, to actually appreciate how they've been and how kind of brilliant and creative and loving everyone is. And then to be able to take the energy that went into the creation of what is and to put that into the creation of what we want. And so it's not making how we are wrong in order to get where we want, but it's about noticing that where we are is in process and on the way to what we want. And this is transformational because it allows people to be okay with themselves through their whole life, as opposed to being at war with each other or within themselves, to like be in opposition to how they have been, but to be able to respect how they've been and to be able to actually appreciate it and still have the change that they want. And to us, that creates a lot more peace inside someone. And that's the focus we have, is that coming into some kind of rapport with yourself and to continually growing the relationship with yourself. And conventional NLP does some nice stuff with change, but it requires a little bit of coming out of rapport with yourself to get the change you want. And so that's kind of,
it starts to involve overcoming your limitations.
Yeah.
Or annihilating your blockages. And it's actually pretty good at that because the toolbox is so remarkably powerful when it's used correctly. But what we have found is that overcoming something in ourselves or annihilating something in ourselves, just although it can be done, we just end up sort of, it's hard to, if we work really hard to defeat something in ourselves so that we can be more of ourselves, how exactly is that supposed to work? So we have a point of view, what we might call in NLP jargon, a frame, in which we're not looking to overcome anything in ourselves. We're looking to use that, and as Carla used that word several times, to appreciate what's been going on, to use that and make changes in it so that what we want unfolds, because we are creatures who unfold our experience based on patterning, based on programming. We have a kind of a question, do we have free will? And we're all on the side of, yes, human beings have free will. And then someone might say, well, what about all this programming that goes on? And we go, yes, human beings have all this programming. Yes to both. The lovely thing about NLP is, if you imagine you're looking at whatever, if you're watching this, listening to this on a computer right now, imagine you're looking at a document that you created sometime in the past that needs to be updated. I mean, like seriously updated, right? It was perfect for its time. It fulfilled the purpose for which you created it, and it got its job done. It got you to this point where now you have a chance to revise it. Only you're looking at it on the screen, but let's imagine a couple of things. You can see it on the screen, you can read it, you can notice all the places it's really, it's worth wincing about, like, and you don't have any keyboard on that computer, and you don't have a mouse, and you don't have any other pointing device. All you can do is read it and maybe get with some other people who are highly trained and talk about why it's like that. And think about what else, if you could change it, how you'd like to change it, and then talk about the changing some more. And eventually, over time, just because it's a pretty magical computer, because it's a human one, and we're not really computers, but go with me, okay? Stuff would start to change on the screen a bit. Contrast that with looking at it, noticing where it's not what you want, noticing what you would like it to be like. And there's some formats for inquiring about both of those things. Gee, what you got going on now? Okay, thank you. And what would you like to be experiencing? Okay, thank you. But you have a keyboard and a mouse and a backspace key. And the parts that are causing the experience you don't want can be backspaced out, so to speak, and revised, and then sort of put back in the operating system and find out what comes out of that. And when it's properly done, what comes out of that is the document you want, so to speak, the life experience you want. It's so nice to have a way to directly change things. Directly. And along the way, we're human beings, and we share a lot with each other, and we understand what it's like to be human, and we come into just a lovely kind of, as Carla uses that word, rapport with what we're all dealing with all the time. And then we go change things if we want to, which we do a lot.
Conventional NLP is much easier to learn because it's pretty formulaic, and what we do takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort to learn, but has the flexibility in it to deal with a lot more. Because we are teaching you how to be with, and kind of the stance to have when working with people that allows for this kind of respect, and of allowing a person to not have to overcome some aspect of themselves to have change. So it takes a little bit longer to really get the hang of how to do it. It's worth the time, it's worth the effort, because it allows for so much more to be able to do so much more than what
with yourself and with others, if you're working with other people.
Yeah. Jaimie, can you read in the chat? Because
yes. So in the chat, Ron says, I see transformational NLP changes our approach to, for example, accomplishing goals we set for ourselves by aligning ourselves internally?
Short answer, yes, but
Yeah.
after the alignment, we're using the backspace key and writing some new code and getting that. NLP is full of, it's from the 70s. All right, the jargon, a lot of the jargon's from the 70s. Right about the time NLP was getting started in Santa Cruz, California, there were a couple of kids named Wozniak and Jobs fooling around in one of their garages with a soldering iron and some circa 1970 motherboards right about the same time, right? And so NLP is, we use the word install and stuff like that. So if the patterning, the programming, which tells our body and our nervous system and our mind how reality is and who we are, if that's not producing what we want, then we go change the code. And we don't do that in some sort of dry, distant, mechanistic way, because human beings, we're not made of silicon. We're very squishy creatures. So it's not a cut and dry thing. It's actually kind of, well, it's pretty like damp a lot of the time, actually, because people cry. Sometimes for joy, and sometimes when they're revisiting briefly what it's been like to be them, and they can feel that starting to change inside themselves. It's really quite beautiful. So we're changing the program, and we're changing the operating system. We're changing the part of the operating system that has the code in it that when we boot up in the morning, so to speak, tells us who we are. Doesn't talk to us yet or tell us yet because we're not online yet, but it boots up and then we're online, and now we have this identity. An identity is based on the words I am. The Latin for, well, idem in Latin means the same. So we try to be the same day by day by day, except we try to be different day by day by day. It's complicated. So we respect the whole experience of being human. All experience is welcome in our courses. There's nothing that's out of bounds. There's nothing that we don't pay attention to or can't work with or can't teach and learn about. And then we go revise stuff, which is the really fun part. So I don't know what I'm responding to from Ron's question anymore, but the alignment is incredibly important, but actually being able to change stuff, that's also incredibly important. The alignment facilitates that tremendously. Yes. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
With that said, wonderful question. And thank you, Carl and Carla. Another question I have is going through the curriculum, core competencies and intensive training core, you will learn to be a practitioner. Will there also be personal growth along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want it. Possibly if you don't want it.
Either way.
Just so the way our classes are structured is it's lecture, demonstration, and small group exercises, and you're in triads. And so you get to practice the skills that we're teaching on each other, which also means you get them practiced on you. So in that, people are bringing their real lives into the exercises, and there's a lot of change that happens. There's also just a lot of change that happens with being in a group of people as you learn this and learn how to work with and communicate in more effective ways, and how to understand people's worlds. Your world expands every time you understand another person's world, anytime you encounter it. So there's a lot of growth that's available, and it's your choice kind of as to how hard and how deep you want to work. Some people really kind of go for it all the way and do huge changes, and some people have some nice, just gentle, subtle shifts along the way that works for them. We're not going to tell you what to reach for. We're going to try and respond to whatever you reached for. So I say this to the students all the time. I don't really care if you get good at NLP. I care that you learn what you came to learn. And you don't have to be good at NLP. And if you want to be practice and you'll get there. We do know people can learn it. Unlike Jamie's cat, who can't learn to stay on the screen. He's so cute. She has a kid. She has 2 kittens running around her background. It's okay, Jaimie. We're all used to cats running around. We also have a lot of animals that run around our backgrounds on Zoom. There is, in my experience, as we learn to really appreciate other people's worlds and other people's experience, with that comes an appreciation of our own. And as we learn to see how it is that things get difficult or painful for people, a fair amount of our own pain becomes a little bit more clear to us as to why it's that way, and the need to fight ourselves over it starts to drop out. So that's how I would say it.
Nice. Thank you.
Carl, you want anything? I'll shut up now.
No, thank you. We're not trying to overcome anything in ourselves. We're revising the events, the steps, the phenomena within humans with brains and bodies and minds that have created and have stabilized experience. A lot of that experience is lovely and desired, and sometimes we take something, if somebody wants it, they do really well, they experience really beautifully, they have wonderful sense of the world or themselves or something. They just want to make it better. We can do that. Most of the change work is resolving things that have been really stuck for a really, really, really long time. Part of the reason that they've been stuck is because we've been trying to push against it or resist what we don't want so we can have what we do want. And of course, when we resist what we don't want, everyone understands what we resist persists, right? Or if you don't, there it is. That's an adage. And we have a way of coming into alignment, of encouraging and then showing each other how to come into alignment with ourselves on our own terms, private to ourselves. And then in the course of learning to do things, someone will ask us, so what would you like to experience? And we respond, and then they proceed to use what they've learned so far to assist us to adjust our patterning. So what we have that we don't want turns into what we want automatically. I know that sounds really good and maybe too good to be true, but this is how it works. And how well does the programming that's speaking to someone out there, the programming you have that creates something you're really stuck about, how well does that keep working? It keeps working and working and working and working. When we revise it, it stays revised. And it doesn't complain that it was running for 25 years and now it's changed. And are we supposed to just let that be okay? The programming is fine. Little neurons in our brain, they don't have any attitude about something. When they disconnect from that neuron and hook onto that neuron, they don't have any attitude. Now for us, when we go, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. Why didn't I do this 25 years ago? That's a different question. And it's also a different kind of change work. That's finding a way to come back into rapport with ourselves, even though things are moving really quickly, and they could have moved quickly before, but they didn't probably. So somewhere in the first 2 weekends, people get a really good sense of how this stuff works. Not exactly why so much, but how. It's really fun to teach. It's really, really fun to teach. I've been doing this for
It changes every year, so it's,
Yeah, you're right. And it's not because I keep coming up with a different,
No.
inappropriate number. It's just many decades, shall I say. And Carla is right there with me, but not quite so extreme.
Yeah, at this point, for me, it's over 30 years, so we don't. Yeah.
And I came into this in 1979. And I kind of like to say, Carla came in 30 years ago. We're starting to get pretty
I
good
came in
at it.
around 86.
Okay.
Completed my first training in 87, so Yeah.
So we're starting to get pretty good at teaching it, and we've been learning from our students for all that time. We're getting really good.
And we're not that serious. We're being more serious tonight than we often are.
Oh my God, this is the longest I've talked without hearing somebody laugh for a long time.
I'm holding back my laugh.
Yeah. This, you know, it's there's a lot of deep stuff that happens in the class, but we also have a lot of fun doing it. It's
Hi, Oscar.
hey, buddy.
Oscar.
I think he's actually going to come.
Oscar.
You can say hi to Carl? Yeah. So it's no fun if you just take yourself seriously all the time. So
Yeah, one of our difficulties as humans is we take ourselves too seriously or not seriously enough.
And
So
that's
we
really-
seem to get it, we get it just kind of right after a while.
Yes. And it's quite true that we talk about some very, very serious stuff, sometimes joyfully, sometimes not so joyfully. But in class, it's always an amazing experience. At least it was for me on my journey through NLP Marin.
and thank you, Ron. He said it's always been great at previous meetings with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
That comes through. Yeah. Yeah. I have lost, there was one more point I was going to make, but I've lost it. So go ahead, Jaimie.
One thing I was going to say is it's possible that Ron has taken an introduction to NLP workshop, which Carl and Carla, or one or the other, go through some of the curriculum, some of the toolbox, and kind of showcase some of the toolbox. And then at the end, do a demonstration of this incredible work. So if you would like to join us for an introduction to NLP workshop, it's on the website, or we'll send you an email with information. You can reach out to me anytime for questions. So, okay. So another, let's see, Ron. Oh, that wonderful Ron. I will get that information to you. And we've been talking about core competencies and intensive training core tonight. We also have the Rapport with Self series. And would you like to share a bit on our Rapport with Self series?
Should we start with the first thing that's the next workshop?
That would be wonderful, which starts December. It happens on December 2nd and 3rd, 2-day workshop.
Okay, our Rapport with Self series is some there's standalone classes. There's 4 of them in the series that you can take, but none of them require any NLP skills going into it. They incorporate some NLP in them, and they're really useful experiences. So the classes are always consists of a combination of brand new students who've never been with us before and people who've been with us for 10, 12, 15 years. To kind of all mixed together. So you get kind of a sense of what the whole community is like. Carl, do you want to talk about the first thing?
We call it the first thing because it seems to us that what we're going to be learning and then installing into our wiring so it becomes a natural part of us in the 2 days of the first thing workshop. It seems to us that the material in that weekend, this coming up weekend, not next weekend, I don't know when you're watching this, but it's the first thing that human beings should know about being physically human. The material is just kind of the first thing. If when you were born, you know, and they got you kind of stabilized and warm and stuff, and you could report immediately to a video cubicle and take a nap while some lovely divine being said, we're sorry we left some stuff out of the orientation class. Here's what you need to know so that you can manage your heart and body and mind and nervous system without getting yourself too afraid or too stuck about anything. I would report for that. I don't know that I would fit in the little cubicle, but I would go take that myself if that were available at the local hospital.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of it. It's kind of fast paced. It's a lot of material, but it's not so esoteric that the concepts don't, don't connect up. And then we do exercises to just put things in place as we go along through the 2 days. If I could, I would just take these 2 days and just blast them out to the 8 billion plus people on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And it is our experience that we'd have an easier time working toward better outcomes with each other. A reality in which there's much less being turned against others and being turned against ourselves. So it's kind of spiritual, but it's kind of neuro-linguistic programming. So
Yeah, it's really of the courses we do, it is one of those that I hear a lot of feedback from our students about. And I've been interacting with a student who's had some really tough stuff happen in the last month. And they were just saying to me that they pretty much use the stuff they learned in that class like multiple times every day just to get through the last month. And I've heard that from different people. It's that kind of basic a skill that it's something that that it's nice to have it in your toolkit for all of life.
and what we do to install the changes into the system, not so anyone is robotically programmed, but so the resourcefulness that allows us to come along to the places where we get stuck or afraid or just kind of collapse down or turn away from what we want because we have doubts and fears, all that ordinary human experience, what we install in there, and it's all up to the person what they want. We don't tell anyone what they ought to be experiencing. We never do that. Our main question is always, what would you like to experience? What would you like to experience? Anyway, they come along to this place where always before they've, kind of turned sideways to their dream, and they go right through that place and they can continue forward. It's the first thing we need to know to be able to manage our own nervous systems and our own creational capacities, all in 2 days. Whew. I think I'll sign up myself, having said all that.
Thank you. Yes, I've taken it twice. So yeah. Okay. And then the other Rapport with Self series class that we have coming up in January 20th, a 2-day weekend, two-day weekend course held once a month for 2 months, Saturday and Sunday. And it's Beyond Blame and Shame. So would you like to share a bit about Beyond Blame and Shame?
Want me to go? Oh, Carl and I are talking with each other. Yeah. So
why
Beyond
don't
Blame,
you go? Yes.
Beyond Blame and
Like,
Shame is.
It's like.
Go ahead. But Carl.
A long time ago, probably in the 70s or 80s, there was a magazine advertisement for a certain kind of recording tape called Memorex. And the image, some people out there, you may be old enough to remember this, but the whole, it was just an image. There were no words on the ad, full page image. The guy sitting there in his chair with long hair, sort of, really nice long hippie hair, and the hair was blowing backwards and his clothing were being blown backwards. And over there was his loudspeaker, right? This was the promise of Memorex. Doing these 2 weekends is kind of like that.
I was wondering where we were going with that. Okay. Yeah. So these weekends, it's 2 weekends, one in January, one in February. Is that right, Jaimie?
Yes.
Okay. And in that we're looking at some really difficult patterning that happens in human beings around what is often called borderline personality disorder. That's kind of the basis where it starts, but there's a particular way that patterning locks in and creates a lot of difficulty for people. Now, we work with people who are interacting with folks that have this kind of patterning. Carl and I developed this course after a few years of talking and realizing that a whole lot of the pain that we encounter in our clients has to do with some kind of the effect of that, whether people were brought up in those kinds of homes, if they had it at work, just some of the things that happen in the world. So it's looking at those patterns beginning through an NLP and transformational NLP lens, being able to understand, to spot it, to be able to notice it, and it's got some really particular things that are different than what our normal interactions with people are. To be able to understand what that is and how that impacts us when we are at the mercy of it or involved in it or participating with it. So it's about how that happens and how to kind of step out of the difficulties that are caused by that pattern, which we kind of call it like being there's a certain kind of trance that people get into, and it's how to kind of step out of that trance. So the first weekend's a lot of information where people are smacking their heads and it's difficult. And the second weekend, we add more onto that, and then we do a little bit of some change patterning, some that does not require NLP skills, to be able to have the experience of ourselves not under that influence, and to be able to find a way to move into a place where we're not under that influence when we find ourselves back under that influence. So it's a really difficult course in a lot of ways, and it is one we consider to be incredibly useful and almost a prerequisite for being able to work with people.
If you are the child of the family member of, or the business associate or employee of someone who is afflicted with this patterning, which is their way to stay safe and to stay connected in life, but it's really difficult to be around. It's not just annoying; it causes the children who are born into the families that are afflicted. It is an affliction. Afflicted with this stuff. They grow up wondering what's wrong with them, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with them. And then if they take this class, they discover that there are, half of the class has been having exactly the identical experience since they got onto the planet, which is a bit of a relief. That's an understatement. It's like, I'm not crazy. This really was happening. This is not about some foundational failure in my character or my identity. This is these distorted fields of learning who we are and how we need to operate in the world to be safe and to belong. This is just so distorted. No wonder I'm like this. And that's actually quite a joyful experience for people. The other half of the class didn't grow up in that kind of place, but they work for people who did. Yeah.
Or they got into relationships with people who did.
Yeah. And as Carla mentioned, this material comes through our lens. This is the only course we do that has anything to do with any kind of conventional psychological diagnosis. So we are not psychologists. We are not formally equipped or trained to declare anybody having any particular diagnosis and so on and so on. However, Carla and I have worked with thousands and thousands of people who've been on the receiving end of the compromises in sense of self and the validity of being here in this world that are the consequence of this patterning. So the first weekend is a lot of information and a lot of people smacking themselves in the head going, oh my gosh, no wonder that relationship was like that. No wonder that boss was so awful. And the second weekend, we collect a lot of experience that people have in the intervening month, which is just really useful. I mean, really interesting also. And then we use the NLP, parts of the NLP toolbox, to very deliberately install some wiring that can free us up when we get caught back in the trance, and free us up when we get caught back in the trance. It's 2 intense weekends, and the people we have in our community who have taken it, regarded as just about the most valuable thing that they've ever done in their lives, that you can get done in 2 2-day weekends. And we have some points of view and some insights into this material that don't exist in the conventional world. So I usually try to advertise it by saying, come take this class. It'll be the 2 worst weekends of your life. But I promised myself I wouldn't say that. Only bad because there's so much about human pain that we're getting right to the basis of in this material, and then opening the way to freedom from or freedom about. All right.
Yeah. And we do it, I think they're 2-day weekends. I'm sorry, I'm a little fuzzy. Yeah. We do it in 2 2-day weekends as opposed to trying to cram it all into 1 3-day weekend, because we found that people really benefit from having a few weeks between the material, just to go away and notice their lives and to notice the patterning that does exist in their lives and compare it with what they've learned over the weekend, and then to be able to come back and to check in. That there's a lot of questions that can be answered pretty quickly if people get a little bit of time with the material before they exit the class. So plan to be able to be, online for those classes and to be able to be present in them. You can do it. Sometimes people want to make it up, like, well, I want to watch it later because they can't make those days. But if you can get those days available, you want to kind of do it with the class. There's a lot of just in the moment, but what about kind of thing. We also were not prepared the very first time we did it for how much the experience of being with other people who've had that experience is, and that I'm not the only one, how isolated so many people feel. And they don't even know why they feel isolated. They just feel isolated in their lives. And like they're the only one, that nobody can understand where they have come from and what's gone on. And watching people kind of come in and realize, oh, okay, this is actually something that happens, and I'm not, it's not like I let my guard down or I did something wrong or I'm not crazy. It is.
I'm not crazy. It is. I'm not crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I say it backwards?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Just to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. Oh my gosh. This actually, yeah, this happened. Oh, and this is kind of why I'm this way. This is part of that pattern that gets, like, there are things that we bring up when we talk about that people don't realize are part of the patterning. That's actually something they could change and they could reach for, because they just didn't realize that it was available. So it opens up worlds of what can become available too.
And it's not about making families wrong or making parents wrong or placing blame or shaking fingers. We do have to notice what happened, right? But there's no blame. There's no attacking anybody. I guess we should say right now, in all of our work, we have a presupposition, like just basic presupposition about being physically human, which is that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have available on their menu of choices in life. Everyone's doing the best they can with what they have available. And sometimes that is inspirational, what they're able to do with what's available on their menu. And sometimes it's terrifying and awful to behold. All right. But we presuppose that everyone's doing the best they can. So it does us no good to blame anybody about anything. I mean, all we get is more high quality language for blaming We don't experience the revision in our sense of ourselves and in our community with all the other human beings in the world, basically, if we're doing blame. So there's not blame, but there is, this happened, this is the consequence. These people over here had pretty much the same things happen. They're having the same consequences. What shall we do about it? That's what the 4 days are about.
And it's not about blame, and it's also not about excusing or making it,
yeah,
like asking you to say, oh, they were doing the best they could. No,
yeah.
it's about
We
understanding.
presuppose that, but this is not use. It lets us respect ourselves and where we come from, but we're never going to say, oh, never mind, you're in terrible pain, you're afraid of this, and you're just crunched about that, but oh, everyone did the best they could with what they had. No, this is not. But we're going to notice they did the best they could, and that was sometimes nightmarish. And if you have the experience of having put your sense of yourself together in that nightmarish environment, your sense of yourself is impaired, shall we say. It is just compromised. You don't have a sense of who you are and who you can be. So we notice that, we notice this, and then we say, and now what would you like? And we go for what we want. And because we have this rather wonderful toolbox called Neuro Linguistic Programming, we can get some really lovely change started that then unfolds itself over time.
And we're not marking out exactly, but you can maybe hear this, that both the courses we've talked about is really about coming into more and more rapport with yourself, more alignment with yourself, and feeling more empowered within yourself, respecting yourself, and being able to function in the world in a way that you feel you respect and that others respect, where you can respect others and not be in kind of a victim mode or not be walked on, but to actually really take care of yourself and treat people with the respect that you have been trying so hard to treat people with. Sometimes we get caught in this, like, in order to be respectful, I have to hold my tongue. Finding the ways that work for you to be you in the world and to be well treated.
And to treat others well.
Yeah.
I think there's a golden rule about that actually somewhere.
Yeah, I wonder where. I've heard it someplace.
Yeah, I thought it was original, but it turns out it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding the original. Okay, I'm not going to even go into like where that might have started, because yeah. All right.
Well, thank you. Okay, so if you don't mind, I would love to dive into our dive-in sale and kind of share what our upcoming courses are and what we're offering now in preparation for them.
Do you have a share screen, Jaimie, that you're going to do?
I do not have a share screen.
Okay. I was going to say, because if you do, then Carl and I should be taking off spotlight, but we'll stay here and make faces while you talk, okay?
Yeah, we'll make faces.
Thank you.
You can watch our faces and know if you're doing a good job. Okay, Jaimie, ready?
Yes. Yes, that's excellent. I'll watch your eye accessing to see what's going on.
Yeah, just watch these subtleties. Yeah.
Okay. Well, oh, this is going to go well.
What is our dive-in sale, Jaimie?
Okay.
Yes, if only I could comprehend the dive-in sale. Please help me. Yes.
Okay. Well, we talked about core competencies and intensive training core earlier tonight. They are a certification class and the first in our certification track. We can talk about the other classes later. But for now, to get started, we have a dive-in sale, and it started Monday and it goes through December 15th. If you're thinking about registering for core or ITC, come join us, sign up. And the dive-in sale is $500 off of tuition if you fill out the application and register before December 15th. If you need more time, talk with me about that. And we also, and so let's see, is there anything else about that I want to share? So the dive-in sale, yes, December 15th. And We also talked about the report classes since there's some time between now and when core starts, which is mid-March. We have 2 classes happening that you can do prior to class. If you want to jump into the NLP family earlier. So we have the first thing workshop in December, and in January, Beyond Blame and Shame. We discussed that. If you register for Core and ITC during the dive-in sale, you $500 off tuition plus $200 off one of those 2 classes if you choose to take them. Yeah. So then you can kind of, get a glimpse. And as Carl and Carla mentioned earlier, the report classes, we're not going to teach you NLP. You will experience some of the tools, but core competencies and intensive training core, you will dive in to the curriculum. I've heard so many students say this is the best thing they've ever done for themselves. I think I was one of those, and many others, because it's not only growing into being a practitioner with these amazing skills, you can use them. You can add them to the career you're in now, or you can go on to be an NLP practitioner exclusively. So I did it for personal growth, and I accidentally became a practitioner in master's because I fell so in love with this work. So if you have questions about the curriculum, questions about anything that we've talked about today, I'm happy to help. We'll send out an email with this information and a Calendly link. That link, you can schedule a time with me. So,
and about being a practitioner, not like I would say a majority of the students in our classes aren't going for being a practitioner. They're not going for doing this in private practice, but they're using it for personal growth and or to enhance their current skills in whatever their career is. It might be a little bit higher number that go for being a practitioner now, but that's not a requirement. You don't need to be interested in doing that to the class. You just to take the class, and we really encourage you to take it for whatever reasons you want to take it. Jaimie will talk you through those details if you're unsure. But over the years, Carl and I have watched people in a huge number of careers take these classes, and the personal change they get and their ability to communicate and to function with a variety of people has helped them advance their careers in many different ways. I've seen people do some take these skills in amazingly creative ways and help people out in the world. And that really just excites us, that anybody learning it is another thing that helps the world. These are life skills that I wish we were taught as part of our general education in this world, and I think are really useful to have. The other thing that I would say is that we have a community of alumni that are pretty amazing, and when you join any of our classes, you kind of join the community and you're welcomed in. And it sounds a little cultish when you say that. This is not a cult. We are not organized enough to be a cult as far as that goes. But this is a community that understands that these stances are really important in the world. It's really important for people to be able to treat each other and themselves with respect, and to be able to do it in really kind of fun and useful ways. And these skills, like, we're excited to get these skills out to the world. And our community is too. They're incredibly supportive of that. They will welcome people in. And I say to the newbies in our core and our ITC class, you've joined a community. You are a community that will not ask anything directly of you, but is just excited to know that you are learning these skills and will be able to take it and share some of these skills just because of the way you are out in the world, and that makes a difference. And it's an appreciation that you can do that. So
thank you for that. I guess that's a great question. Ron sent a response. He goes, that's my reason for this, personal growth. We need that in the world. Of course, I understand that. Yeah. Beautiful. And people ask sometimes, what is a community like? Completely diversified. It is absolutely wonderful. All different backgrounds, current careers, changing careers, in the middle, adding this work to their career or starting a whole new one by becoming a practitioner. We have therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, coaches who add this to their practices. And we have, but that's just a percentage. We have so many others. This work is great for one-on-one sessions, but also group sessions. It's, yeah.
And for parenting, and for supervising, and for hiring, and for customer service, and for sales, and for, it's like there's elements in all of this. And our community has some very young people, and it has some seniors. I think the youngest person we've had in class is about 15.
Yeah.
And the oldest we've had in class is,
I didn't dare to ask
like that.
our dear friend.
Yeah, it's people from all walks of life, and it's really fun because they interact with each other, and you interact with people that you would never be in the same space with to interact, much less necessarily if you were in the space, know to choose to interact with them. And yet I've watched some of the most odd seeming friendships form that just last, that are really sweet. And I've seen these things don't get you excluded. They matter because it's you. That they don't, they're not qualifications in or out. Who you are matters, but it's not a reason for inclusion or exclusion. Inclusion is automatic.
It's also this material, the knowledge and the toolbox that comes with the knowledge, or the knowledge that comes with the toolbox. It's really good for Thanksgiving dinner too. Just keeping that in mind.
Nice.
I try it out on my family regularly, and they still talk to me.
They love you more than ever, Carla.
Wonderful. Well, is there anything else? Ron, do you have any questions? Any other questions as we wrap up?
It doesn't look like it. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you,
Of
Ron.
course, if you have more questions coming up in the future, just check in with Jaimie. She will answer what she can answer. If there's anything she can't answer, she usually sends me a text. So we'll get you an answer one way or another.
Yes.
And come to one of our intros where we use, well, you can see back here, I have an easel with flip chart on it. So when I'm doing the intro, I put a bunch of pieces of the core curriculum onto those flip charts, and I show people how it works. And Carla does something very similar.
Yep.
And
my flip charts are just out of sight right now.
Yeah. So that's more of a class than an introduction, really. I mean, I take it back. It's
mini
more,
workshop.
Yeah. We try to teach you everything we know, but fit it into about 2 hours.
We get a little excited about people learning this stuff, and so sometimes we want to give you everything and every answer.
If you want not a better sense, but a different sense of this stuff, come to an intro. We look forward to seeing you. Thanks, Jaimie. Thanks, Carla.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Jaimie.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carla. Great to see
Off we go.
Hi, John Boy.
you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Mary Ellen.